scale. This one is coming in at 309, releasing January to June 2024. And this figure really forms the basis of our main discussion for today. So we're going to be talking about this figure and talking in relation to this figure for pretty much the rest of the show. So sit back, relax, and enjoy, ladies and gentlemen. But I think it looks pretty good. I think the portrait looks good. I think Hot Toys is continuing to be the leader in the eye rolling system at the moment. And I think it's nice that they gave you the winter coat. They gave you sort of the shorter coat that he wears in the film. Um, I would say my biggest issue with this figure, which, you know, I think is the issue that I have with any figure like this. I just don't like um, seamless arms. I know it wouldn't be as clean, but a simple, Thor like joint swap at the shoulders I think would have been nice for those that want to pose in that iconic sort of vest gripping pose. But there are plenty of iconic Bane poses that you can do, sort of like this arms um, outstretched pose that I think you can still get your money's worth with this figure. Price wise, I think it's so. No pun intended, but oh wait, no, it doesn't. Just kidding. I was like, it does have the swap out arms, but yeah, this is interesting. They are advertising it as an inner metal skeleton with enhanced articulation range. I don't know that I've ever seen Hot Toys advertised like that, though I could be wrong. Um, but yeah,
Yeah,
I think this is
Zach, can you
interesting.
speculate on what that may mean though, compared to like the Wonder Woman they just put out that has a seamless
Yeah,
body?
so let me see if I can find this picture here.
I'd be curious if they
I'll
advertised that for the Hellboy as well, because it was a similar like figure construction from my
Yeah, Ben,
recollection.
go ahead and start pulling that up for me if you don't mind. I will look because there was a photo recently where someone had an Ahsoka that the arm burst open, and I don't think there was a metal endoskeleton inside of it
Oh,
though.
got it. Okay.
I could be wrong. But basically, like Bison, there's like like a metal structure on the inside that essentially is like the skeleton of the figure. And all the joints are basically like steel or aluminum, I don't know, some sort of metal.
Mhm.
But yeah, this is interesting. For some reason, I don't think that they've ever advertised that metal skeleton. That's typically like a Bison TB League kind of deal. But yeah, I mean, I think it looks good. There's some issues with the proportions that we'll definitely talk about, but um, yeah, I'm curious to see what Ben's able to find, and if I'm able to find this picture of this arms that tore.
Yeah, so it's saying just in the description, so it didn't mention that. So I thought it might. So it just says for the Hellboy, newly developed muscular red-skinned body with over 20 points of articulation, featuring detailed skin textures, tendons, seamless elbow joints, built-in joints, and neck and tail, but doesn't mention a muscular like the body inside. I thought it
Yeah.
was. I thought it was. But
Someone tear the arms real quick and let me know.
oh
There
my
you
god.
go. So Ben, have you been any more tempted? I
Wow.
know you already have your custom Bane, but seeing more and more of this, are you getting tempted at all?
I feel like I need your help and the chat's help on my decision-making process here. So I customized my DX12 with the Armory head sculpt, a new Jackson Jew cape, and I've loved that figure ever since. So I was not tempted to upgrade to the DX19, even though I've got the two-pack Joker coming from Inart, and that Joker is going to be slightly more in line with scale with the DX19. I was able to kind of feel my way around that. I was like, it's fine. I can pose them kind of close, not necessarily beside each other, and feel like I can get away with it. I've got the Bane 1.0 version, and I've heard the community kind of giving that figure shit this week, which I'm surprised about because in hand, actually, it's still one of my favorite figures that I have in my collection. I've always thought it looked like Tom Hardy. I've always had it with like his overcoat on, and so you don't see the joints or really the musculature necessarily underneath anyways. I know our buddy Joao Breda said that he took his jacket off and it had actually stained his arms on his 1.0 version. I haven't had that experience. I took it off the other day just to check, and it was fine. This Bane is obviously significantly larger than even my 1.0 version. He'll be way bigger than my DX12. and he'll obviously be a little bit more in line with the Jokers I've got coming. The Dark Knight films are my favorite films of all time. So if I were going to have a grouping of characters in my collection that I like invested real money into, it should be this line. But I've also been really happy with the DX12 and the Bane 1.0 version that I have. So do I gut the collection, resell the ones that I've got at a loss, and pay more to get a DX19 in hand plus this Bane? Or do I just stick with what I've got and put that money into all of the other cool shit that is coming out there? My FOMO side of me doesn't want to miss out. I think this looks amazing. It's clearly an improvement over the 1.0, but like justifying taking the loss and spending all that money again, I don't know if it makes sense for me. What do you guys think?
Yeah. So big no on taking the loss. Yeah, I hate that option. I would say the only way that you could justify it, if you wanted to pose this guy without the coat and then have the other version posed in the very classics. So if you could justify 2 Banes in your collection, that's the only way that I could see, you adding it. The only reason I bring that up is because I really want to display him with the coat, but because the body is so beautiful, I think the coat will stay in the box. So at that point, am I getting another third-party figure to, maybe display the coat with? I'm kind of going through those options here. Or, I never get 2 of a figure, but is this one that I would consider getting 2 of? Just like you, Ben, obviously the Dark Knight trilogy, my favorite, trilogy. And although I don't love the Dark Knight Rises as much, I think Bane is like probably the second strongest villain out of the trilogy. So, and Tom Hardy's, incredible. I know Dean's going to say, he's a dud in this, but I just really like everything about the figure, and don't want to push you into any FOMO because I know it's so easy to do here. But I would say that's the soul searching that I'm doing myself, and I'm sure you're doing as well. On if we can justify 2 different looks for this figure. Dean, what do you think?
Well, and sorry,
go ahead, Ben.
Sorry before you go, Dean. I think the challenging part is not necessarily even justifying having 2 Banes, but is it then do I buy a DX19 or hope for an in-art Batman to come out so that they're all scaled with each other? Because I put this Bane next to my DX12 and it's going to look ridiculous. Like it just won't be the right scale together anymore. And maybe in my mind's eye I can kind of pass it off as Bane is just a big dude. But I'd be worried it would look weird. And then I've been able to talk myself out of the DX19. The only fold in that I might have is if InArt comes out with their own Bale, Batman, maybe a 2-pack, something along those lines that gives me more and gives me more of a reason, I should say, to justify moving the Batman on. I don't think I would have 2 Banes in my collection. I just don't think it would make sense. I try to stick to one figure for every representation I have. And as I said, I've had this guy in my collection. I've always been happy with it. The fear of missing out is hard. I think it was Krem that said in the chat, or maybe I got that wrong, but that people will always shit on the previous version, even if the newer version is not that much better. And like that's true. But this guy is definitely better. I just don't know if it justifies me getting the collection and hitting the reset button.
And I don't think you have to worry about Batman at all, right? We know InArt's going to do it. We don't know if it's going to be a 2-pack, but if you're really inclined, you can go really premium if there's room in the budget. And I'm sure at that time, people are going to be, selling off that DX19 to buy the InArt version. So I think you'll be able to get a Batman, no problem. I will say PT Works says, agreed with Marco, his Bane is going to beat up my DX12 and DX19 posed with my Batpod and Tumbler. I think you could have Bane lifting the DX12 if you really wanted to.
That's a good idea.
Again, I'm not trying to pressure you, but I think there are ways to, justify in your head here, Ben.
You guys are all dangerous folks.
Trying to be a good friend.
I want to hear Dean's take in his Bane voice, by the way.
He's going to humble us all right now.
Buying this figure would be painful for me. It's definitely an improvement on the original one. Let me get that out in the open. It's much better. The proportions look much closer to the film than the original figure. Did they fix the height at all? Does anybody know?
I don't think they
I don't
showed.
have a photo
Can
here,
you go to
but
the
it's
side by
probably-
side with the arms, Zach? I don't know if they're like lined up, but it. You were
I don't
there.
know if I have the
You were there.
photo.
Right there. Go back one more. Right there.
Oh
on the
yeah, he's
left.
probably a little
It seems
taller.
like he's
Yeah.
a little bit taller there.
Okay, because I saw one with the Batman next to the original one, and like Batman was like taller than him, and I was like, that seems silly.
Bale is way taller than Tom Hardy, though. They
It's
just use
important
Yeah,
to
but it's
remember
Bane.
actor height versus character height.
I know
Always-
the camera tricks.
We'll talk
Yeah,
about
so
that
it
in
just
a
seemed
second.
kind of silly that Batman would get whooped by this tiny guy. Tiny and like a height says fucking Tom Hardy was jacked. But anyway, so I think it's an improvement, and I think that it's good to see. I think Hot Toys deserves the credit where credit is due. You know, they did the detail on the neck. It's seamless, which a lot of people were concerned about. Not really anything you could do with the wrist, unless you gave us those weird articulated hands that just like the fingers always look all fucked up. So I don't mind the wrist articulation. I would have liked to have seen leather, like actual leather on the jacket instead of another
Totally.
pleather.
Yeah.
But I think like this is the Bane to get currently. I know there's some third party ones out there, and you can make a pretty decent Bane, you know, kit bashing if you really needed to. But yeah, I mean, it's 100 years of whatever the fuck, and that we're getting figures we've already gotten before. Like, am I a little kind of underwhelmed? Yes.
What would you like to see to match the festivity?
What was it? Warner Brothers?
Yeah, like I mean, what would
I'd
be
have to
appropriate?
go through their catalog and see what they have, but it's like, does it really have
mean,
to be
just
the
look at-
Dark Knight again? Like,
Yeah. Just
I
look
mean,
at
it's
what
also
Inart's
what
doing. It
what
feels-
license Hot Toys have from to select from, and
Sure.
I think they've certainly been going back and revisiting this film. So
Yeah, and
Nurse
it's
Joker
getting-
probably. I don't think Hot Toys would ever have. I don't think it would be smart for them to make a purple coat Joker at this point. I think.
yeah,
Inart has
I
that-
think a Nurse Joker would have been smart because
Yeah,
they've already
100%.
done 2.0s on everyone else, right?
Yeah, they've
So-
have Batman. They have Two-Face.
They did Scarecrow, Two-Face, Catwoman. Yeah, it's like, okay, like, does Bane make sense? Sure. Is it kind of boring? I think so. But again, I don't really like these movies. So, like, if you're excited for it, that's really cool, and I'm glad for you.
We will talk about the two jacked, my friend. You don't you worry.
Yeah, I see that as well. So I'm excited to get into that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm so sick of this fucking movie. And then it's like, well, Inart's doing this, and what if they do that? It's like, oh my god, I'm never gonna get away from this fucking movie. But I'm here for the listener, not for me. So we're gonna talk about it. Let's get into it. Let's roll
Let's
the
get
roll the
into
show.
it.
Jim.
And I will just say
do
the
it.
100 years
God damn
pointing
it.
out Warner Brothers as a license that they're, going deep down. To me, it feels almost like a shot at Inart, and maybe that's just, I don't know, I'm projecting there, but because
You're projecting there.
those are their main license, right? Those are the main license that they have.
It's different markets, though.
Well, okay, but they're importing over here, so it's competition. Anyways, let's move on.
So these are the K1 Master side by sides movie and Hot Toys comparisons.
It's a movie
I
in
think-
720p. What the fuck was that?
Well, you're not fucking ripping straight from the Blu-ray, my guy.
could have asked
I
me.
think Hot Toys. Maybe a little bit of extra weathering on this jacket here on the right, or the vest rather. It almost looks like it's the wrong color, but I think overall, I think they've done a good job. Actually, the more I look at it, this jacket fits pretty poorly on the Hot Toys compared to the actual. I take everything at
Opposing
nice.
it with
I
that
sit back.
jacket, though.
Now, my biggest complaint is I genuinely think this figure is way too bulky. And I know for years collectors have been doing like the Fison, like, where you buy the head and the outfit, and then you just get like the most jacked Fison body that you can find, and that's your Bane. And I think we have that ingrained in our minds. But in reality, he was a monster. Don't get me wrong. But the Hot Toys is like, in my opinion, like next level jacked. And it kind of brings me to our main talking point tonight, which is, and this is a very like, it's not a very concrete discussion. Like normally we have things that we can prove tangibly with our discussions. This is more like your opinion, how you feel about things. So our main topic of tonight is the Mandela Effect. So the Mandela Effect refers to a situation in which a large mass of people believes that an event, or in this case an image, occurred when it did not. The term was first originated in 2009 by Fiona Broom after she discovered that she, along with a number of others, believed that Nelson Mandela had died in the 1980s when he actually died in 2013. Now, I do have your hot seats for tonight. So, Dean, the Dream Martin, I'm going to show each of you 2 images, and you tell me which is the correct image and which is an incorrect image.
Okay.
Dean, which of these images is correct of Mr. Monopoly?
I mean, I already know this one. It's the one on the left. It's the Monopoly guy without the monocle. But
All right.
everyone remembers him with the monocle. It's even a fucking joke in Ace Ventura.
All
Where
right.
it's
Dean
like,
gets,
yeah.
we don't need a full life story, but Dean gets 1 point
I liked it.
for this one.
It's
Marco,
the Monopoly guy.
Marco or Ben, would you like to go next?
I'll go
I
next.
will. I will kick. I'll defer. Go ahead.
Okay,
Ben.
Ben. Looney Tunes spelled Toons or Tunes?
Toons.
That is incorrect. It is Tunes.
That's a tough
Marco,
one.
That is
Yeah.
a hard
Pikachu with the black spot on his tail or Pikachu without?
Oh, this is the same picture. Wow, shit. I have to say on the right. It has to be on the right.
That is correct. So the Mandela Effect, again, the way that you remember things may be slightly different. And me and Marco had been discussing this before we wanted to bring it up as a topic. But essentially, do you want your collectors to feel right to you? You know, when you close your eyes and you think in your mind's eye, do you want a figure that feels right or do you want a figure that is right? Okay,
Like
and I
looks
want
screen
to
accurate or looks at like how you remember it, right? Is that the...
yeah, exactly. So I want the chat to chime in as well. And Marco and I have pulled some examples. Star Wars, for example, a lot of people think that Vader's helmet is all black, that his armor is all black. In reality, it's a mixture of black and gunmetal. And this was done to create a little bit of a Harlequin pattern, helps the mask, some of the detail in the mask show through. And in each of the films, the pattern is present. And you know, the films, the sculpting of the helmets is a bit different, but they still do have those Harlequin effects.
You blew my mind with that one. I did not know that at all.
Yeah, C-3PO having a silver leg. A lot of people think he's completely gold from head to toe, but in reality, in the original trilogy, he has the silver on his right leg. This is, to me, you know, I'm going to die on this hill, but I genuinely don't. I think the Hot Toys has a great Mandalorian portrait. Don't get me wrong. But I think it's like 10 years too young, Din Djarin. He's not like, he doesn't really look like the portrait, in my opinion. I may be incorrect.
Yeah, he's got a
but-
pretty bad receding hairline.
Yeah, so, you know, take it or leave it. But again, do you want to close your eyes and see what you imagine Din Djarin looks like, or do you want to see the incredibly handsome, though definitely more aged Pedro Pascal? And I would say I'd be happy with either, but I do like what Hot Toys gave us here.
Give us the most fuckable version for sure.
The Mandalorian. A lot of people want this shit to be like super Merichrome, and they're going back and taking all this chrome weathering off, which I do think it's heavy-handed. But in reality, in the show, his armor isn't like a Merichrome finish. It's, I would almost say, somewhere between the first Beskar and the second one. But a lot of people, you know, in their mind's eye, they want this, you know, Merichrome finish almost, and they're reworking their armors to have that, which, you know, again, this is their figure. They can do what they want with it. The Iron Man Mark 1, people think it's this massive hulking suit. In reality, compared to the other suits, this is by Hot Toys, and you might say, well, Hot Toys fucked up the scale before. You are correct, but compared to other figures like the ZD toys shown here by Justice Collection, even within that same line, they're all, you know, fairly recent figures. It is by far the shortest armor of the Hall of Armors. Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi, a lot of people thought the cloak was black. In fact, it is brown. The black cloak is this is a more recent edition with the Mandalorian costume. Bane, again, we mentioned it, but I think it's far too bulky. So I ask you on the panel and you at home, do we want our figures to feel right, or do we want our figures to be right? Because I do think, there are differences, right? Like, obviously you want this massive hulking, super buff Bane, breaking Batman's back. But in reality, I think the build of the one that they showed in the comparison the Hot Toys showed, I think that's actually, a far more accurate build to what we see in the film. I'm curious what you guys have to say.
Yeah. Now that you have Vader on the screen here, I'll talk about my Vader.
Yeah, I can cycle through these photos as you like.
Yeah, and you helped me put together my Vader, so you can speak on this. I started with a base Sideshow Deluxe Darth Vader, which is fucking huge. He's like a head taller than he's supposed to be, if not more. He's massive. It's like unbelievably incorrect in size. It's crazy. But to me, that is Darth Vader. Every time he's on screen, that's all you see. Like, he's such a presence that I was like, I actually don't mind the fact that my Darth Vader is way too big. So I actually kept the original body and I changed other stuff about the figure to make it better, right? I changed the helmet, I changed the robes, this and that. But I kept the body because to me, Darth Vader is larger than life, and I want him to look like that on the shelf. So I think it depends on the character. Like Bane, give me the biggest fucking buffest body you can put on a Bane, because in every iteration of that character, he's ridiculously shredded. He's got veins coming out of his body that are like green and shit. Like, Bane is supposed to be that hulking kind of intimidating guy, right? But, if you have like your Tony Stark and he's like 2 feet taller than he's supposed to be next to Thor, it's like, that looks fucking goofy as shit. So I think it just depends on the character or how important, I guess, that character is to you. But that's my 2 cents.
Checking in with the chat, Tyria says, Mandela Effect had me recently. Mr. Bean only had like 15 episodes, whereas I thought it had seasons upon seasons. PT Works says a combination of both. I'm fine. Cuervo, I personally could care less if things aren't screen accurate. As long as it's close, all good. I don't want to stress about stuff like that. DJ says, to me, the head sculpt looks like Vito Corleone. You're not wrong. Shooter says the jawline is too square.
It's Oberyn Martell right there.
Yeah, Niculio says, don't mind modding if I do want more accuracy, but close enough is just fine for me. Cuervos, again, says it's meant to be a hobby and fun. If I start stressing about perfection, I will never be happy. Rob says they established the superior Beskar when he first got it all shiny straight from the armor, but now that he has some fights, it's more lived in looking, which I prefer. Even in those initial shots, it's not like mirror chrome, just for what it's worth. DJ says depends. Some things look better and accurately, and some don't. OG fan, it's how it makes me feel. Sometimes good enough is good enough. Blackbird, I want accuracy, but some subtle differences here and there aren't deal breakers either, as long as it's pretty close. 1/6 shooter, that's it. It's the presence and the way the camera portrays them to be. Ben, what do you think here? This is a very mind's eye type of discussion. We're kind of going into uncharted territory for us here, but are you a stickler for screen accuracy, or do you want things to feel right to you? And I think it's something that I've struggled with for a long time as a collector.
It's an amazing question because I've got. I think it kind of depends on the character, like you guys were saying earlier. For me, when it comes to the face, the head sculpt, I want that to look as accurate as possible. I think that Pedro Pascal head sculpt is good, but like you said, if he had a bit more of a receding hairline, if they'd aged up his jawline just a little bit, if they'd made him a 10 out of 10, that would have been a head sculpt I feel like I just absolutely could not miss having in my collection. When I look at a character on my shelf, I don't want it to feel like it's the Wish version of the character. I want it to be a shrunk down representation of that person. When it comes to the outfit or the body, I'm okay closing my eyes, and as long as my mind's eye representation of that outfit is close, I'm okay with that. So this Robin actually is a good example of that. This Robin's outfit is significantly more red than the film. In the film, it's a lot more toned down, almost like more of like a darker metallic red.
It's like a bronze almost,
Like
like
a
a copper
maroon?
bronze.
Yeah, it's quite different than the figure. Now, when I'm looking at this guy on my shelf without a movie still next to it, I'm like, yeah, that's Robin from Batman
him.
Forever. If I pull up the screen, I'm like, it's not really accurate, but I'm okay with that because it's the outfit, it's the body type. Again, his codpiece is larger in figure representation even than in the film. But like when I close my eyes, I think the body or the outfit can have some artistic representation. I think as soon as you get away from that accuracy with the head sculpt, that's when figure representation in my collection really takes a nosedive. And I'll literally talk myself out of figures because I don't love the face. The Neytiri Avatar figure that's been recently announced. I saw the film and like the newest film, and immediately it re-inspired my love for the Avatar franchise. I had a great time watching the movie. Neytiri is an amazing, badass character in that movie, and I was like, if they release any character from that movie, I want it to be Neytiri. I would get her by herself. And when I saw the face, it's just not there for me. Her eyes aren't as big, they're not as round, they're not as glowy. She just, like, as an alien goes, she's not as pretty of a blue alien as she is in her film representation, and I just don't see it. So I don't want to own it. I just don't. For me, it talked me out of the figure entirely. Unless they update it, I won't do it. So I think it will depend on face likeness versus outfit likeness. If they're both off, then yeah, I usually don't necessarily buy the figure. But I wouldn't buy a figure that just has an amazing outfit and a sculpt that I didn't think looked like the character well enough, anyways. Mm-hmm. Not unless I was paying bargain bin prices, at least. Maybe that's when it also changes. We're paying such a high dollar amount for these to have them in our collections, that obviously you want them to be as accurate as possible. But it's in the face where it's really going to bring that out for me.
Absolutely. For me, I think it's like the rule of cool, or like whatever looks badass, right? So obviously they talked with Dave Filoni, and why am I forgetting his name? He directed Iron Man.
Jon Favreau.
There you go, Jon Favreau. When they were talking about the behind the scenes for this Mandalorian, iconic scene, and they were just talking about how hard it was to get Luke to be what you remember him as a kid. It's like we can go completely screen accurate, but everyone remembers the black coat, and it actually looks, cloak. It actually looks more badass when it's all black. So for me, I think I kind of lean towards whatever just looks cooler. I guess that kind of goes towards the feel that you were talking about. If it feels correct, then that's really what I want representation of. For the Mark I, that's one that I'm, sitting on the fence on because I want to see how it turns out. I'm not happy with the scale, even if it is accurate to the movie. I remember that being a hulking, big, wide, tall suit. So if it comes out and it's this little guy, and I try to pose him next to any of my other Iron Men, that's not going to feel right to me at all. And so, yeah, kudos, I guess, to Hot Toys for getting it screen accurate, but that's a big old suit from what I recall from the movie. So, yeah, it just would dissuade me from going down that route. Let's see some of the other examples. What were some of the other examples? Oh, and then on the Bane, obviously. I want him big. Like I want him to be a big, beefy guy, even if, they kind of would have shrunk him down to be more screen accurate. It wouldn't have felt correct. And so I think this body, seeing it immediately, it's like, that's Bane from what I remember. He broke Batman's back, spoiler warning. And yet that is the perfect representation that I want on my shelf. So I will always go towards feel over screen accuracy.
But it's interesting because you wanted me to try and talk you out of getting the Aragorn from InArt because you're not a huge Lord of the Rings fan. Mm-hmm. Fan for sure, but not a huge one. But then when they showed that newest prototype, I don't even know if I really looked at the outfit because the head sculpt got me so hard in the feels that I was like, damn, like
Got you so
that
hard.
is Vigo. Like it is. And so again, that took that from being a cool figure, but I don't know if I'd get it if I didn't need the representation, to holy crap, that looks so much like the actor that I almost can't justify not having it in my collection. So for me, as I said, it's that likeness in the face.
No doubt, Ben. Yeah, that's really why I'm into Hot Toys and 1/6 as well. Though I love those face sculpts. A really strong sculpt can really, put a borderline figure into a must-have for me, and those are kind of few and far between. But yeah, Vigo. I mean, Aragorn's just such a cool character that the fact that they nailed the sculpt, it like makes it, to me, one that I had to take the plunge on.
Definitely all great answers from the people on the panel. I think you guys have done very well with tonight's discussion, and it's definitely a more thought-provoking one. I appreciate everyone in the comments as well. I'd struggled with how to frame this question for a few weeks, and the Bane was like the perfect opportunity to bring this up. So big shout out to you guys and the chat as well. Our movie of